a restraining order on him.
On who? Me? What?
No, that guy.
Oh, that guy. Yes.
That guy.
We know that guy. Uh-huh.
It sounds like the inverse of the old Marlo Thomas TV show for some reason. Have you seen that guy? It's that guy. That guy that likes to get girls drunk and mess with them. It's that guy. It's that guy that talks racist stuff behind your back. It's that guy.
I think
we all know that guy.
I think you got a new series there, Doc. You know, see, you got to come up and play trivia with your knowledge of old school TV. No, I'm serious.
Every year we have the same conversation, and he never comes.
I know, and he's got this warehouse of vintage TV show and radio show knowledge. It would be awesome. It definitely would. Okay, well, I've got Not Your Father's Mountain Ale cracked. No notes at all. We're gonna. What do you mean?
I left all my notes, I think, at work.
Notes? We don't need no stinking notes.
That was was all about. It was like notes.
Oh, are you ready, Glenn?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Alrighty, let's fire it up. And welcome to another edition of the Spoiler Room. Yes, it is becoming our yearly tradition once again that we cover some of the films that happen at a horror festival in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It was the second year of the Northeastern Wisconsin Film Horror Festival. And tonight, I've got a great crew who were there to check out the films, and we're going to talk about some of our favorites and not so favorites. See, I put that better than worst because...
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm trying to spin a positive, man. But I've got a great crew tonight, and I'm very excited to talk about some indie horror. First off, the diva of the Spoiler Room is here with us tonight, the one and only Dawn. Hello, Dawn.
Hello, Mark. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Glad to have you in the Spoiler Room with us. And next to Dawn is the BFD himself, Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn.
Hi.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing just great, thank
you. He is a humble man, but he is definitely a big fucking deal. And next to him, the bow tie man himself, the man who helped co-run the new horror film festival. It is Mr. Paul Salzer. Hello, Paul.
Hey, guys.
How are you tonight?
Hey.
I'm fantastic. I love October. It's my favorite time of the year.
I do too, because I get my white girl drinks. So
interesting.
Well, pumpkin spice, man. You know, pumpkin spice, everything. I got pumpkin spice chipotle. I got pumpkin chipotle salsa upstairs in a jar. I have no idea what it's going to taste like, but I got it. I also got pumpkin seed tortilla chips. Okay. I have no idea how the hell those are going to taste, but by God, I'm going to get my pumpkin seed tortilla chips and dip them in some pumpkin chipotle and probably turn into a pumpkin myself. And next to Paul, we are joined once again as he has stopped through his journey in time to discuss with us the finer things in indie horror. It is Doctavius. It is Steven. Hello, Doc. How are you?
How are you now? Doing fine.
Glad you could join us as well into this episode. And yes, folks, the Northeastern Wisconsin Horror Film Festival, second year running. Paul is the director, or co-director, I should say. We also have Lee Moreau, who's not here tonight, but and it happens in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, great cheesehead state. You know, what better state to watch horror films than one that spawned some of your most famous cannibals? So we're going to roll right along here and start right away with talking about one of the films that stood out for us in the festival. There will be some overlaps, so those of you who may have had these on your list as well, chime in. We'll talk about 2 or 3 of them for each person here. So let's start first with Glenn. Hello, Glenn.
Hi. I'm glad you started with me.
Oh, awesome. So what was one of your faves of the fest?
I didn't have any.
Oh, good.
That's not true.
Well, there you go.
Why the hell would I be here if I didn't? If that's the whole point of the show. My absolute fave of the show would be Muse.
Oh, Muse, nice. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Muse?
Well, Muse, directed by John Burr, is a story of an artist who kind of attracts the attention of an ancient Irish spirit, Ilananshi, who pretty much acts as a muse. She inspires him and also protects him from all harm, which means that she kills anything that threatens him in any way whatsoever.
Yep, that's it. And it's an excellent pick. And what was it that stood out for you in this film?
A big thing for me is as I've been getting older, and just watching a lot of horror, especially with the 31 Days of Horror that a bunch of us do. I've been gravitating more and more towards stuff that is much more psychological and more character focused than just how many bodies can we rack up. Though this one does have, its share of blood, but it's definitely much more of an, I would say, more artistic in its approach. A lot of great use of imagery and atmosphere, I think, and character to tell the story rather than just, I'm going to strap you to this chair and cut all your fingers off. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Mostly.
Most of the time. Muse, yeah, that's an excellent pick. That was one of the 3 features that played at the fest. And yeah, I will definitely agree. It is a mature movie, but it definitely, it had, while you had the grotesque gore going on, you had the horrific images, you had some intimate imagery in here as well. And a little more sensual and than I expected with a film like this. Dawn, how'd you feel about Muse?
Like Glenn said, mentioned already, it's a very character-driven film. I like characters. I have to connect with a character in order to like a film. The 2 main characters, the Lananshi and Adam, the artist, there was a lot of character there.
Mm-hmm.
The villains, I'm using the finger quotes, the villains of the piece were completely flat. They were one-dimensional. They were there to move. They were there just to kind of move the character develop of Adam along.
Sure.
What I liked about this film mostly is you could really tell, you could really see his changing from a very timid, shy, insecure artist to something very aggressive after the Lananshi entered his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he accepted her and understood what he was. He didn't just, he didn't need, well, I don't want to say he didn't need her to protect him, but he moved, his morals shifted from her protecting him to him using her as a tool to commit murder.
Right. Yeah, that was an interesting shift with that, oh, hey, I can actually do this.
And get away with it.
And get away with it, too.
Yeah. And too, it's interesting to note that it's not necessarily a love story.
No.
It's a story about obsession. And it's possible that love comes later, but it's mostly just a story of obsession.
I don't think love ever would enter into it. Yeah, it is just...
I think at the very end.
The very, very end, yes.
Yeah, the very, very end.
That could be it. Though, as any good indie horror films, they leave things a little ambiguous towards the end to make you wonder, what did that mean? So, which Muse definitely has. Paul, how about you? What'd you think of Muse?
I did enjoy it. It was my second favorite film of the festival. It gave me kind of this Tales from the Dark Side vibe, which I really did enjoy. I thought it was wonderfully written. I did get to talk with the director-writer, Mr. Burr, prior to the festival, and he's just this amazing guy with amazing thoughts. And it was quite a joy to watch this film, and I loved how the production value of this film is. It actually looks like they spent $1 million on the production of this film, and it still had that, intimacy yet still. And like I said, it gave me the feeling of watching Tales from the Dark Side, and I loved watching that show when it was out. So
yeah, it does have that feel. And also the fact, folks, don't let the fact that it says indie film or whatnot turn you away. The budget, the production design in this, the production has a really high quality value look to it. Camera work, sets, lighting, everything, audio was really top shelf here as far as the quality goes for an indie film like this. Doc, did you get a chance to see Muse?
No, I didn't. I haven't had the privilege to see that yet. I arrived in the dinner break just after that.
Ah, that's right. I am sorry. I had forgot that whether or not you had seen it before that. Well, it's definitely one that I think you would have dug as well. It is a very intimate, sensual, disturbing film in some respects. And yeah, Dawn's completely right. It was very interesting to watch the Adam character played by Riley Egan just take this turn with this basically this being who has latched themselves onto him. And as he goes on, he realizes this may be it may be the death of him, but he doesn't care. He's so obsessed. And I will say, I loved the artwork in here. I forgot who it was that did. What'd you think of that, Glenn? Did you enjoy some of that art paintings that they had in here that he did?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things with a film like this. If you're going to have a film where art plays a key role in it, you have to actually have some good art. And you have to have art that, that looks like it at least has a chance of doing what the movie says it's doing, because this movie's, his art is supposed to be so powerful and, so fresh and vivid and, everything that it's got people talking. And it really, really does that. It's the artist did a tremendous job on it.
Yeah, and the art even felt a bit Celtic, the way he made some of the figure. I mean, some of those pieces like dark Celtic, but
I had asked the director writer what his muse was for the film, and he did mention that artwork was sort of he was very inspired by the artwork that was created for that film. So it's kind of interesting that you guys brought that up, because it definitely was a huge motivating factor for the filmmaker.
And props go out to Elle Evans, who plays the Lananshi. The way she acted, because did she have much of any dialogue?
She didn't have any.
She didn't have any, did she? No. But she was still able to really convey some, I think, a powerful performance through here. And you could kind of see how he could become obsessed with her. Just, the way she acts towards him and that, and him being this struggling artist, the fact that when she's around, he has these fantastic paintings. You can see how he could become obsessed with her. But yeah, excellent choice, Glenn. I think that was on a few people's list of favorites of the fest. So we'll move right along here. Dawn, how about you? Did you have one of the faves of the fest that stuck out for you?
I did. Which one to talk about first?
Well, we may not get to all of them, so just pick one.
Then I think I'm going to bring up
just say it. You want to.
The pharma training video.
There it is.
The pharma lab training video. That was that was creative. And Yeah.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what the Pharma Lab Training Video 1 is about?
So it's essentially a training video that is being watched by new prospective pharmaceutical employees at a testing facility. And it is a very twisted, graphic, bizarre look at how this pharmaceutical lab views success and failure. Yeah, and at the very end, you get the big reveal, which, spoiler room, the trainer. Okay, so the whole Pharma Lab training video is set up in this semi-high-tech laboratory, and the trainees are wearing these virtual reality glasses, watching the video, and they're using microchips in their brains to control them. And at the very end, you find out that the trainer, spoiler room, is a guy with a guinea pig.
Guinea
in his
pig.
brain.
Guinea pig. This was one film where you did not know where they were going to go with it. Wouldn't you say, Doc?
That's a pretty safe assessment, certainly, because you get once even it's starting, because as Dawn's pointing out, we're watching what appears to be a playback in virtual reality of something that apparently was sourced from videotape. So there's a layer of time and disconnect there to begin with, and then once you start settling into the reality that we're watching this thing, it keeps getting more interesting, shall we say.
Surreal.
That too. It's very. I had this listed as one of my favorites too, because it's weird, but it's also very funny. Mostly because of poor Peter.
Poor Peter.
And what happens to his Peter at one point.
Yes.
And mashing his hand and things. But yeah, it's just so delightfully weird. I'm really looking forward to seeing this one again, to be honest. That and not to confuse it too much, but I was lumping this together with American Zombies because they're made by the same creators.
Right.
And they share that weird quality to them both.
It definitely falls in the category of, we all watch tons of movies, and you think you've seen it all. You think.
And I have to give props to the filmmakers. They, during the Q&A session, they said my favorite quote of the entire fest: "You can't explode a dick twice."
That was high on my list of good lines. Yes.
Yeah.
I think they were also the filmmakers that say you're going to make something ineffective. You're going to make a lot of crap. If you compare yourself to people who've been working in the business for 30, 40 years, yes, you're not going to look, with the same quality as them. But everybody starts out making some shit first, so you just gotta keep plugging away until you get something you're happy with. And they're both of these are really they have a vein of creepy and weird and unsettlingness to them. So they're not just funny to the sake of being funny, where the humor is coming out of the whole. There's definitely some tension in both of these. It's very unsettling.
And the filmmakers are from Wisconsin. Director Joe Bose and Ryan Klassa, who was the assistant director on I think at least one of the projects, were there at the festival. And two folks from Wisconsin, and they fully recognize, they've made crap in the past, but these two films are definitely not crap. Glenn, how about you in Pharma?
I like this one. It was fun. And the whole reveal at the end, I mean, that was, it's rare that these days that many of us, I think, rare for many of us, that we don't see something coming.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a nice little surprise at the end.
It definitely was. Paul, how about you with Pharma Lab?
I'm going to first of all start out by putting on my promoter's hat and say one of the reasons that you have to go to festivals is to hear the filmmakers during the Q&A sessions, because you learn a lot more than you do just watching the movies on the internet, you know?
Yes.
So definitely you have to go to the festivals. But about the film itself, I thought it was outlandish and very playful. It had a lot of good gross out scenes, and I'm not a big fan of gross out scenes, but I enjoyed the ones that were in this film. And like you guys all said, it does keep you guessing. And I think it also had this extra layer of cerebralness. It very much had this kind of like Naked Lunch feel to it. And I did enjoy that a lot.
Cool. Yeah, that was on ones on my list as well. Paired it up. Yeah, I kind of grouped this and American Zombies together because it makes for a great double feature of these two, even though not just because it's from the same filmmakers, but they're very creative, different spin, showing you why we like independent films, because you do still get someone who will take a genre or take a concept that has been done many, many, many times and still give it a slightly different spin, enough to keep it fresh and entertaining. And I think they did that with both of these films. So excellent choices there. Doc, how about you? Did you have a fave of the fest you wanted to talk about?
Certainly, considering we just talked, these were my first pick. So thank you, Don. making me dig a little
overlap. I knew there'd be overlap. So
makes me dig a little deeper. It's okay. Because the up until we saw those, the one that I was probably the happiest with up till that point was I Love Eva Marsh.
Oh yeah,
which French film, feels very much to me like a short version of Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the story of a young man who seems to be just kind of getting to that point in his life where he is starting to be expected to grow up and be a man. He still has some of those childlike fears, some concerns, and then his mother's going on strike at the factory where she works, so she's going to have to leave him alone for a few nights because dad's long gone, apparently, and he's not really ready for this because he's got a bedtime ritual still with his mother and things like that. But the old lady next door, her granddaughter, starts visiting and kind of gets his attention accidentally and intentionally. And she's apparently an age, a year or so, maybe older than he is. So she's kind of pulling him towards more adulthood and pushing him to do some things he's not comfortable with. And there's a situation that he's at a like a little dock, a damaged dock, where there's a story to tell and a dare and things like this. So it's a story that it tells you enough of what's going on to make it interesting, but not so much where it felt like, hi, we've wrapped this up in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, however long this was, and it's all over. It still felt like there was more story that it could have told if it wanted to, but at the same time, there still was a feeling of closure to it.
Yeah, there was quite a bit with it, and it was French, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
okay.
It was French, so subtitles. So don't let that scare you, folks. But yeah, it does have that Stand By Me type of feel to it. That was kind of the vibe I got from it. Bit of a coming of age type of film. And this is, of course, one of Paul's favorite types of horror, isn't it, Paul?
Yes, it is. I do enjoy the kind of supernatural, and this is the type of, and also too, you guys both talked about the Stand By Me vibe, and that also added an extra layer that I enjoy because I like thinking about my past and how, all the crazy things I used to do as a kid. It made me really connect with the characters of Ben and Ava and so forth. So it was well done in my mind. And, the basically the like pontoon is just a crazy little thing because you can. I'm gonna calm down because
You really liked this one, didn't you?
well, yeah, because we used to have this like little raft out by the lake in Palmyra where I used to live, and we used to occasionally go out late at night when you're not supposed to, and it was not a closed off beach area, but you're not supposed to go out swimming, and we used to do stuff like that, and so it's just amazing that a movie can take me back to my childhood, and it didn't have all of the I shouldn't pick on modern horror because some modern horror is still great, but I like this type of horror, and it's great. I'm so glad that this was chosen in our festival. So.
Yeah, I am too. I liked how it plays out quite a bit with it. It is a little bit tamer than maybe my tastes. But Glenn, how'd you feel about I Love Ava Marsh?
It is definitely tamer, and that's one of the things I liked about it. Not just for the fact that I liked a tamer movie, but also in a festival, I think you really want to have a good variety of film. I mean, unless you're specifically going like, this is a zombie film fest or this is a gore film fest. But I mean, when you want to just showcase the genre as a whole, I think you want to have as much variety as you can. And this really is definitely different from, what a lot of people, your gatekeepers, would call horror. And yeah, and again, it's much more, it's a bit more, it's muted, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Good term.
Yeah, and I just love that. I love the whole less is more philosophy.
Yeah, I did like it, and the supernatural aspect of it. There is some special effects in here, the makeup effects. There is a creature, if you will, that shows up eventually in this film that I like the approach. I did not expect that part. Dawn, how about you? Did this one surprise you a little bit?
A little bit, and I too liked it. But there was something I noticed, or I was more open to when I saw it, when I was watching it at the festival, as opposed to the first time I saw it, that made me view it as a much darker, more terrifying film. And that's viewing it as realizing what actually happens at the end of the movie. He's, as has already been mentioned, he's a young boy whose dad has already left him and is out of the picture. His mom, he still has this ritual with his mom, but now she's kind of pulling away because she needs to work. So he makes this connection with this young girl, and it's kind of a tumultuous connection because she's older, but she's fragile. She's kind of the cool girl, whatever. So he's doing this dare to please her, and he thinks he loves her. And then here's mom back in the picture, but instead of mom being the supportive, loving mom, she's totally attacking him and telling him that she doesn't have time for him. And this is about the same time as the supernatural thing is introduced. And he's just a broken person, feeling alone, abandoned. And it at the end, the first time I watched it, I didn't really think too much of it. I'm just like, okay, so this kid, he's trying to come to terms. And the second time I'm like, holy crap, this kid's about to commit suicide.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. You just opened that door and I can see that perfectly. The whole walking off the end of the pier. The mom. Wow.
To the only person that wants him, the supernatural creature.
Okay. Well, you just got it real heavy in here, Dawn.
Yeah. And that's why this movie creeped me out so much watching it at the festival.
Yeah, I could see that, because that's he does start talking about how she wants her son, and I can see him giving
and
that
he
to
wants
her.
somebody to love him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the. I mean, Dawn, that's exactly the impression I got from it at the end too. It's that
Wow, and that's not exactly what I got, but now that you guys mentioned it, it falls all into place.
I think it was. I think it was there in my mind, but I'm not sure I considered it until you actually raised that point. So
most people wouldn't, though.
No,
because you don't want to think that a child of that age would do that.
And that makes it. That does add makes that quite horrific then too. Thank you.
It does. Thank you. You just brought a whole other level to this film that just creeped me the hell out now.
Well, I'm glad we talked about the comedies already, because I don't need to have my mood lifted.
Wow. Okay. Paul. You're the director, but you also got to look at these.
Yeah, well, after that last thing, we should talk about Hope, but instead, I'll bring up
about Hope.
No, I'm going to bring up my favorite film of the entire festival.
Okay.
And this I loved it, every moment of it, and it's the film called A Father's Day.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It was amazing, because especially when I purposely, because most of the time during the festival, I'm running around kind of doing things in the background, and I don't actually get time to watch the movies again. And I actually purposely went up into the balcony area to listen after the movie, and there was this small little pause, and you could hear that, and then the clapping occurred, because it was such an emotional film. It's basically not your typical zombie film. Essentially, you get this girl zombie who kind of discovers a father figure zombie, and they both have the perfect Father's Day that a zombie could have. They basically go to a park, and they have a beautiful Father's Day together, and at the very, very end of it, you have one of the survivors doing what survivors do, basically lines up a shot and is ready to kill both of the zombies to protect, his family, and then he's stopped by his own daughter, and it's just so powerful, so emotional. You play on the thing that it eats at your heart, and it really does. And it's just an amazing film. I love this film, and when I saw it, I was like, if you guys didn't vote for this, I'm gonna bring it into the festival anyways. That was how dedicated to this film I was.
Did any of us not vote for this?
No, everybody voted for it. Yeah.
I have to trim my friends list otherwise, because this was my second favorite film of the fest.
Woohoo!
And was it about it? Was it what Paul was talking about, Glenn, that pulled you into this, or?
The emotional thing was one thing, but it's just that it's not the first movie that's done, from a zombie-ish point of view, but it's the first one done in this way.
Right.
And it's one of the few. Not a lot of time movies touch upon the fact that, it's always. You always have that one little scene where it's like maybe someone's mom becomes a zombie or girlfriend. It's like, oh, but it's like, it's not Beth anymore. But this is more of there's still some humanity in them. There's still those fragments of who they were. And you don't get that in a lot of zombie films.
Yeah, you don't. It's kind of missed. The zombies are there to show you how horrible humanity can be to each other, usually. Dawn, this one pull at you too?
Yeah, a bit. It definitely, as a parent, you got to wonder, am I going to eat my kid?
Oh.
Well,
what would I do to protect my kid?
Sure.
Yeah. Aw.
And we've had films that explore that from the, oh my God, from the survivor point of view, but not from the zombie point of view. And that was a nice twist.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Doc, did you get a chance to see this one?
Yeah, I'd arrived by this point. I was glad that there wasn't a cheap joke ending, because it would have been relatively easy after that emotional moment to show a couple credits and then have the survivors be eaten, even if it was by this pair of zombies. And that would have, to be honest, that would have wrecked anything it built up to me, because it would have been like, that's such a cheap joke now. But having that moment of recognition kind of between the survivors and those, yeah, it's kind of a, oh, well, that's actually kind of, because it was kind of a little charming, a little not quite goofy really in that way, but there was kind of some fun to it. And then you get to that moment of drama, and it could have very easily been washed away with a bad joke ending, and it didn't, thankfully. So it made it kind of sweet in that regard.
Yeah, it did. It could have easily gone that direction. You are absolutely right, Doc, on it. And that's one thing with the horror films, short films especially, you're usually waiting for in that short film the other shoe to drop, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that shoe doesn't exactly drop there. What that film goes into is how it finishes. And yeah, it definitely was a change of what you normally kind of see when you're dealing with zombies and survivors in a horror short. Paul, you had something to add?
Yeah, you guys kind of hinted at the whole kind of, we could have ruined it with a joke, but because I got to kind of manipulate the lineup, I got to basically manipulate people's emotions by surrounding it with comedy,
True.
Basically horror comedies. I surrounded it with restricted diet and holy
fuck.
Holy fuck. I did that on purpose because I wanted that emotional thing to be even much more. And then I also wanted, because I thought, my goodness, this is an intense film. I wanted to lighten it up, because normally I just put all the comedies up in the front, and then we get progressively more intense toward the end of the block, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But this particular block, I put A Father's Day right in between the comedies for those two reasons, basically to heighten the emotional pull of the film and to make sure that people didn't jump off of a pier.
You should have paired it right away with "I Am Very Close." There you go.
Oh yeah, that would have been just, oh my god.
Pair those two up. There you go.
No more return festival goers. Wow.
And I think we hit everyone's favorites of the fest. And most of the people picked things that I found enjoyable in this film. Although I found most of these were enjoyable, but I guess one I'll bring up is one that you opened up the festival with, and that was Hope, which is another kind of touching zombie film, but kind of shows why the zombies suddenly become man-eating machines. We get the story of it's, I think like a waiter or like a diner type waiter who is been turned a zombie in a world where people turn like zombies, but they aren't flesh-eating crazy zombies. They just roam the earth, basically, kind of sad. And here our zombie kind of finds a picture of a girl, and he starts to have a little hope. And leave it to two young girls who decide to pick on him quite a bit. Ends up, taking a turn for the worst when he thinks he meets a zombie love of his life, and then she is taken from him. And that's where apparently the zombie apocalypse goes downhill from there. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. I thought that was a bit of a twist. I did not expect it to go that angle, that they would actually go into an actual relationship, and the way it ends. There is some humor worked in there along with some touching moments. Glenn, what'd you think of Hope?
This one, it was all right. I liked it too. I think it was one of the better ones, probably to start off early on.
Right.
I'd say it was, I mean, above average. I wasn't like really like wowed by it, but I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was a solid open. Dawn, how about you?
I thought it was a solid open.
Mhm.
I did enjoy it. I'm a fan of zombie movies. Zombies are my thing. I can't help it. So I thought it was a nice twist on the zombie genre.
Mm-hmm.
I liked. I was entertained by the narrative.
Yes. So, Doc, I know you missed the opening, but Paul, what was it about Hope that made you want to lead with this film?
I think, well, one, I just liked the idea of starting the festival with hope. It just, it you know, it made me feel good about it, and I did enjoy the film. But also too, I do like to find things that I can relate back to, and this to me was my high school. You know,
really?
Yeah.
Someone blew a hole in the head of your date, and so
Well,
you
not-
went around eating people's intestines.
Not literally my high school experience.
I'm like, damn, you should have caught that on film.
Yes. No, but I could totally understand, you know, Carl's thing, you know, where he felt like he was an outcast and he felt like there was no hope. But, you know, if you I think that's the neat thing about zombieism is that if you go on long enough, and potentially you could go on forever, especially since these guys don't need to feed. It feels like, you know, you have hope regardless of how hopeless things go, even after it is all gone, you know. I just feel like there's always going to be a chance for possibly a sequel or something.
Was this you hoping that the festival would go well by leading with hope, Paul?
A little bit like that, and it just, I don't know. It felt right as soon as I saw this, and as soon as the judges selected this film, I knew that it was the very first film that got slotted into the festival.
Oh, nice.
That means for next year you're going to need a new hope.
Oh no!
That was rather painful, and I don't want
like it.
I don't want the episode to go too late tonight, but I think we'll kind of flip the page here, and maybe ones that we'll mention one or two that, as I said, our faves and not so faves, ones that didn't quite stand out for you, that, you know, out of the group of films that you saw, maybe you kind of cared for the least. And Doc, we're going to start with you. I know you hadn't seen all of them, but of the ones you saw, was there one in particular that you were just like, yeah,
there were a bunch of good ones that we didn't get a chance to mention for many reasons, and there were only a handful really where I was a little, once we got to the end of them, I was kind of like, okay, that was a movie. Just glancing at the list, the first one that really jumps out to me is Trapdoor.
Yes. Yeah.
And whoa, enthusiasm for that. Thank you, sir. And by that, I don't mean anything negative towards it, really, in so much that it was a perfectly serviceable film. But for what actually happens in it, it could have probably been about 3 minutes long. And it was maybe it felt like 20. It was probably closer to 10, but
I think it was 10 to 15. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a young man
15.
arriving at a building where apparently he's going to be staying the night, and it's empty, and he checks every room like twice. And eventually there's something crawling on the walls that gets his attention. But I like the fact that it had very little dialogue. I think it actually would have been better had there been no dialogue at all, because the dialogue that's there is really purposeless.
Yeah.
And there were some other I think even Sandman after that was a very similar story, just done in a more concise manner. So for what it was, it could have just been more concise, and I think it would have played better. That's the only reason why I kind of speak against it, if I can say against.
Well, that's why I said kind of least faves. I mean, I don't think there was one, really like just, oh dear God.
Agreed. Yeah.
No. There weren't really any of those, but yeah, I have to agree with Trapper. For the payoff, it seemed like a really longer trip, and I don't know if maybe it's lost in translation because it was from overseas. But for me as well, I thought if it was trimmed up a bit, I understand maybe they were trying to build some tension, but the gimmicks were too. It's a bad term, but you know what I mean. The gimmicks were far and few in between. I think to really, keep. I almost forgot. Wait. This is supposed to be a bit scary, and then we get a moment of scariness. But Don, what do you feel about Trapdoor?
I agree with you. There's a lot of gratuitous buildup that could have been trimmed away to make a more solid film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Glenn, how about you?
Could have been a lot shorter.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul.
I'm gonna defend it because it was meant to be a suspense builder, like you guys mentioned, and that's why it was placed before Sandman, because it was meant to build up the suspense into Sandman, which is why it was the Sandman is similar, like Doc had mentioned. So that's why it was placed together in the way it was. And I think we needed a film that was more of a thriller and less of the gory, the comedy. We had a lot of comedies. We had a lot of zombie movies this year, and Trapdoor was, I think, one of the few that was just an out and out kind of thriller. So
I did like that it was a different thing. It just I said, it just felt
like it's the least of the ones that you liked. Yeah, that's not. Yeah. There's no problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah, thriller is a loose term.
Wow.
Well, no. Again, it's because it's too far in between for me. There wasn't exactly. I mean, you have a little bit of buildup where he's going through the house. Okay, and then
he goes through it again. Yeah.
And then there was like nothing, and then he went through it again. I'm like, okay, and then.
And like you said, it's possible this is based on some, fairy tale or creature story that's told in that country that we're just not familiar with, so they feel the beats differently.
Mm-hmm.
It was just for our audience, or at least for me as the audience, I didn't have that background if it's there, so it didn't read to me that way.
And like I said, I'm not slamming it at all. I mean, it was a perfectly, as Doc, you said, a perfectly serviceable film, but yeah, it felt to me like I was missing some of the meaning, the residential part of it. It almost felt like he was a visitor at someone else's house, gotcha. and I think maybe they, that might be a more common thing in that area. Like you said,
it was a hostel or a really big Airbnb, one of the two.
Right. I think there might have been a little bit something lost for me because for the payoff, I was like, I wish we kind of would have had that a little bit sooner because I didn't really have a whole lot of tension through most of that.
And then suddenly in a moment of visitation by a member of KISS.
Yes.
Wow.
You have to get Derek to induct it in the. No, never mind.
Never mind.
I'll stop that now. I'm just being silly.
So, Don, how about you? Was there a kind of a least fave or one of the faves for you that just didn't quite hit it for you?
There was, and I'm very torn between bringing up what one of my less favorites, and I like them all, versus what I have heard a lot of other people not
Vote
like
for
so
you.
much.
Vote for you.
Go for you. Yeah, go for you.
All right. So that would be, oh God. Damn.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be the Hag bloodline.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
It was a great concept, but it dragged on a little bit long, and it never really clarified what was going on.
Mhm.
Okay.
It had great suspense. It needed to be longer or shorter.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It just
Was that the one with the sleep disorder?
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I had the right one in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it either needed to be longer and explore things more with more payoff, or it needed to be shorter with the payoff it had.
Mm-hmm.
Either way would have made it a more solid film. And I did like it. I'm not saying that I didn't like it. It's just I would have liked to have either seen more or less, depending on what the filmmaker's vision was. It was intended to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like, for me, we got the concept right away, but it felt almost like they were trying to make sure, okay, this is this is the disorder or whatever. You know what I mean? It felt like they were trying to reinforce it when I don't think it needed to be reinforced what she was going through as far as the disorder. But yeah, you're right. Shorter or longer would have probably helped it. Glenn, how about you with this one with Hag, the Bloodline?
I do not remember this one. I did not. Was this day one?
No, day 2.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get to rewatch it, so.
Okay.
Fine.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right, man. I'm the one who had to leave early.
Yeah. Doc, how about you with the Hag Bloodline?
I would agree in general with Dawn's assessment that it could have been a little shorter or a little longer depending on what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the concept of the sleep disorder. I like the fact that for me the repetition to a certain point made it feel like rather than just understanding what she was going through, we were getting a chance to live through what she was going through so that we could try to feel it rather than just understand it, because those are two different things.
Right.
It did get to a point where I was expecting it either to start paying off or not, and then they introduced a couple more characters and it kind of stretched it a little. I did really like the performances. Especially the lead. I thought she was really good in it. I really, and this is going to sound weird maybe, but I really like the fact that when they decided that they were going to go to a soothing bath to try and help her sleep, that it wasn't sexualized.
Right.
She was just taking a bath, and we didn't have to get fleeting glimpses of anything that might be considered, salacious. That said, in retrospect, that scene could have been cut altogether and it would have worked just as well. So there's kind of a mix in that regard to saying it could have been shorter. I think the payoff was solid, and I think it was a decent film, but yeah, it either could have been a little shorter or a little longer, and it would have worked perhaps better, just because it would have potentially resolved some things or explained some things. Not that it needed a whole lot of explanation, but yeah, you could have maybe even trimmed 5 minutes or so, and it still would have explained itself well enough and paid off well enough.
Right. And Paul, well, you were the director, so you loved all of these. I know. But what was it about Hag? I know besides it being supernatural horror.
Yep. But I also had again, I keep saying this. I love how it goes back to something in my past, and I did at one point in my life have an experience of sleep paralysis, and so this brought back that night for me. And I agree with you. This is probably a film that would have benefited from a different length. But I thoroughly enjoyed the ending. I thought it was just like, wow, this is the ending I expected. but you're right. I mean, it could have benefited from a shorter format just to get the story out, or a longer format to kind of get the audience thoroughly into the story and then get all the things kind of worked out. But again, that, back to my experience, I was still fixated on that past experience, and it just was one huge metaphor. The hag was a metaphor to me about the experience. So
Sure.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it was a bad film. It just, it could have been it could have been even better.
Okay, so we will move on, I think. Glenn, how about you? Did you have one that just didn't quite hit for you? Hey, there's a sigh.
Oh.
One that didn't really hit for me. Yeah. Main Street Meats.
Really?
Really?
Whoa,
Yeah. It just I don't know. I just couldn't get into that one. And it's not like I thought it was bad. Just something. I just couldn't get into that one.
It just didn't grab you?
It did not.
Okay.
And I figured that I would get some groans from that one.
No,
Grown, just surprise.
No, that's what I meant. Surprise,
different strokes for different folks, man. I'm just curious what it was that possibly didn't agree with you on it.
Probably the meat. It was probably
the meat. The meat.
Well, that's all I can eat right now.
I can totally see that coming from Beth.
Yeah.
Knowing Biff's taste.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
No pun intended. But Main Street Meats, I can see it might, it may be hit or miss with some people. I will say on a second viewing, I enjoyed it more than the first viewing, in all honesty. And I think part of it with Main Street Meats, I enjoyed it the first time as well, but I enjoyed it even more the second time because it is a film I think really needs to be seen in a group. I think Main Street Meats it's a good film, solid film, but I think it's even more enjoyable. That's the type of film I think that really works well with a group. And I think sitting in the theater and the people's reactions along with it really helped me enjoy the film more than when I did the first time I saw it. Because of just the energy, I think, and the fact that, you're not the only one laughing at something.
The laughing actually helped me to like the film a lot better. If you try to take this film seriously, and if you don't understand that it's kind of a grindhouse type film, you totally miss out on what I think, Jeff Lyons is, was trying to do with the film. So I really do think that having the audience there laughing at a lot of the things gave you permission to say, hey, I can laugh at this film too.
Well, I got worried. I will say I got worried when it opened up with the grindhouse rough print thing.
Oh, did you?
I'm like, oh no. Tell me other folks here, because we've watched a lot of indie horror and that grindhouse thing ever since Rodriguez and Tarantino. Yeah. It's like you look at it and you see the broken film, you're like, oh great, they're going to use that through the whole thing, aren't they?
And they're going to melt the film halfway through, right?
Right.
It becomes a cheap shorthand for something that we never really experienced. But I was amused by it because it felt like a Herschel Gordon Lewis film, or it felt a little bit in the same vein as Undertaker and His Pals, which I enjoy. So that's by no means. It probably wasn't a perfect film but I was willing to have fun with it rather quickly. So yeah, from that perspective, that's why it worked for me really well.
I can definitely see why it may not hit with everybody though. So interesting choice, Glenn. I always love asking you questions like that because you always surprise me, sir, in a good way. For me, I enjoyed it, though I will still say that it maybe could have been trimmed a bit, but that's it was minor because I still enjoyed it and I still think it flowed. I think maybe it could have been trimmed a little. But Dawn, did you have any thoughts on Main Street Meats?
Well, I'm just curious. Was it just the schlocky? Was it the schlocky gore and the stuff that you didn't like, Glenn?
Yeah, I guess I just might not have been in the mood. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe I'm just not enjoying the schlock as much as I used to.
Mm.
And I think it's not so much a reflection on just this movie. It's the fact that there is so many people doing schlocky stuff, and so much of it is so bad it just is kind of like, I guess, kind of tainted the genre for me, perhaps.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, it's no different from when you get a whole bunch of zombie films at once, like we have had, and then it gets hard to find something that you enjoy because they all kind of start blending together, and there's so many of them that are poorly done. So yeah, same where you just go, if you've watched a bunch of them recently, you can be like, okay, here's another one of these, and even if it was a fun movie normally, you'd be like, I'm not in the mood for more of this junk.
Yeah,
or vampire films. Definitely. We had a run of vampire films. So we've all had that moment. And then you go back later on, you go, oh, that one that I didn't like 10 years ago when it was surrounded by all this other junk. It's not so bad. It's the same thing with music for me, to be honest. There's been plenty of times where just go, oh, I am so not in the mood for this song. I keep hearing the damn thing. And you come back to it later in a different context, and it reaches you differently. But it doesn't mean that, you're still right. Because it's right for you.
It's different folks. That's why I love film. Everybody, it's my mantra. Everyone will see something different. You can have a whole group of people sit in the theater, and everyone will see something different. And that's what is great about films. And you just gotta really the tough part is there's the internet where everybody thinks they're right, and so if you voice opinion that you may not enjoy a film, well, God help you if everybody else enjoyed it. But here we expect that and can definitely see your perspective, Glenn.
So, absolutely. I can. There's not a whole lot of depth in this film, but there's a lot of layers. One of the things that appealed to me very much was they were very blatant and they were very subtle about their gore. I'm a gore whore.
Yes.
Everybody knows that. Everybody in the universe knows this. But I liked also the music that was chosen to go with the gore. I thought that was extremely effective. And I think those two things made the film for me.
Awesome. Well, always a surprising pick from Mr. Bittner. Thank you for that.
Yep.
I love you, Glenn. You always surprise me, sir. And Paul, I know you're the director, so you may not want to voice one.
I could cheat and take it outside of the heart of what you were trying to intend, and I could pick on a film that we didn't select.
It'd be kind of hard to discuss, but
I don't think most of not all of us may have watched it. But
and how about you talk about a film that audience?
Let's say that again. Oh,
how about a film that was less well received by the audience?
Okay, that's a fair one. That's a fair one. Okay. I heard a few people were a little bit confused by The Contractor until I explained what my thoughts were on the film, and they were like, "Wow, that does make it an interesting story." I don't know if the filmmaker actually intended my version of the film, but that's how I watched it in this way, and I totally liked it. Well, with The Contractor, you basically had the start of the film was very exciting. You got this kind of like they're making a phone call, and they're sending in the contractor to kind of do a cleanup job. He's kind of the fixer type of guy, and unfortunately, when he gets there, he finds a box, and inside the box, there's like the spirit, and a lot of people were kind of confused by the whole experience. Is this a spy film? Is this a supernatural horror? And what I did was I kind of flipped the story on end, and they seemed to like that version better. Was when I said, now think of the story as the guy that was sent to clean up the thing is not the contractor. The spirit is the contractor. The person that they called in was the ghost to try to basically deal with the guy, and it sort of changes the story, and it made it a lot more exciting. And when I there was at least 2 or 3 groups that talked to me after the film, and they talked about this film, and I said when I thought of it in this way, they were like, "Wow, I didn't think of it that way, but it does make it a little bit more exciting than what they thought it would be. So that's my story about the contractor.
That's his story, and he's sticking to it. Dang it!
It is. It is. It's a lot better than the one that I was going to talk about. So yeah.
The contractor, Glenn. Did you remember this one?
No.
No. Dawn, how about you?
It's definitely more interesting the way Paul described it. I thought it was a interesting supernatural twist, but really, all I remember, and I remember thinking it during both viewings, is very clearly in my head, all I could think is dumbass.
Yeah.
All right, Red.
Doc, did you get to see The Contractor?
No, I have not gotten to see that film yet. No.
Paul, your spin is interesting, though I don't think that's what the filmmaker was.
It was not what they intended, because if you look at the summary, that is not what they thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's somebody opening up essentially Pandora's box.
Yes, it is.
And yeah.
I felt the same way about this one as I did about #NotAlone.
Oh.
It started out strong. I was all for it. Then they kind of felt the need to put a CGI effect in there when they didn't need to because of the setup.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I felt about Contractor. I think Contractor didn't need the spacey stuff surrounding him and such. I think they could have gotten away with some wind machines and maybe a bright light that he suddenly, disappears in, versus kind of the graphics that they used, because those took me out of it, and it was just like with #NotAlone. I loved the setup, just like Contractor. I loved the setup and how it went into the beginning. And then you got to the very end with the payoff, and I'm like, you had to put a CGI thing in there.
I was really worried about #NotAlone because I thought it was very similar to a film that we showed the previous year. I think it was called Selfie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was really afraid that people would be upset if we showed this. But I think the reaction to this film was good. So.
Well, it goes along with what the trend is now. I mean, these are devices that everybody has, and they're going to be tools in horror films, and it was something similar, but in spirit, I think, but it definitely was executed differently, because again, you're using a similar concept of a photo taken in a selfie, kind of like you had, was it Synthenasia?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Also involving a cell phone.
Yes.
I enjoy films that do that don't use them as the only reason they use the cell phone is I have no signal in the middle of nowhere. Oh no, we're stranded. I'm like, come on. It's like, what carrier do you have?
Cell phones. I ran into this running a role-playing session back when I first started role-playing. We didn't have the cell phones, so you could build up suspense in a story because people couldn't communicate with each other. And now with the movies and storytelling, role-playing, the people just brought out their cell phones and they were like communicating like they had like military grade communication software talking to each other. And I'm like, you just totally zapped out every bit of suspense in it. Get rid of the phones. But it is modern. It's the modern society now. Everybody has cell phones. Deal with it. It's your flashlight. It's your Encyclopedia Britannica. It's everything that you can, and it kind of sucks out a lot of things. That's why if I make a movie, the first thing that the slasher is going to do is kill their cell phone.
Yeah.
Just, you're dead.
And I guess for me, I have a few that didn't quite sit right with me, though. A couple of them were better on second viewing, like Plasma. When I first watched Plasma, I did not care for it. But that's because on the smaller computer screen, you don't catch a few of the things in it, like what was in the cup he looked at when he got up in the morning.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
you don't quite see that. And there's nuanced things in there for plasma to where if you don't catch them, it's freaking dull. You're like, wait.
Yeah, I suppose.
No, I mean, if you
Yeah,
don't catch that setup in the beginning of him feeling for where she is, the reason why he's wearing the mask, which, you know, gets more revealed at the end, the fact that there's very little blood left in the cup at the very beginning. If you don't really catch up on that and realize what those are meant to be, you get to the end of the film, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, but for me, one that just really, you know, I tried and even with second watching, but just it didn't do it for me. Really was the color one. What was it? The one that had all the colors with her in the background, and there were all the sets from the films, and it showed like the whitening and the reddening, and what the hell was the name of that movie?
The name of it.
Hell Hunt.
Hell Hunt is what it was. Yes.
And it sounds bad, and I know I'm completely off, and I love to get your guys' view. I know we're running a little late, but Hell Hunt for me just felt very, lack of a better term, and Don, please correct me if I'm wrong, because you know how I'm horrible with vocabulary. You and my wife agree. Pretentious in many ways, like, look at us. Look, we know Italian horror. This is what we're kind of doing with the colors. Ooh, look at us. I guess for what we got at the end, for me, it just did not have me from beginning to end. You know, in the very end, I'm like, oh, that was a cool ending with the horns and all, but okay. You know, what was I watching it twice, I just missed, I think, what he was going for, and it just came off to me like it was showing off that, hey, look, we can do this in this style, more so than substance. Am I off on that, Dawn?
No, it was totally it.
No, you're breaking up there. What was that? I'm sorry. Uh-oh, we lost Dawn.
Oh crap.
Oh no, there you go.
You're back.
You're back.
Okay, it totally.
Nope.
In horror.
We lost you there again. One more time. It totally what? I'm sorry.
She must be yelling too loudly.
She must be yelling too loud.
So much enthusiasm.
Oh, wait.
The film doesn't want you to talk about it.
You're breaking up a little there, Don.
Easy talk, man.
Oh, there you go.
This is fair because when it played at the festival, the film kept breaking up too. So clearly, it's meant to be a reference.
The sound was a little bit off because for some reason that entire set, what happened was that the volume control on the computer spiked, and so it would cause everything in the films to reverb through the speakers, and so we found out how to we basically had to manually turn down for every movie. We manually had to turn down the speaker system in the venue, not on the computer, in order to get it.
That's weird.
Are you sure that wasn't Sunday, Paul? Because this is the one that just didn't play back correctly visually.
Yeah, that was Sunday.
Really?
This one,
that kind of broke.
Early Sunday afternoon, there was a sound problem for a while, but that got corrected. It was
we fixed that.
This was Saturday night, and it just kept breaking up, like it was buffering poorly.
It's possible because this had an intense visual component to it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So Don, what were you going to say now? Hopefully we can get it.
Am I even coming through?
Yes, you are. Beautifully now.
Okay. No, it is totally an homage to Italian film.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretentious.
Good.
And
I'm just glad I wasn't. I had the right word in there because it just didn't come off right to me. So, but
it was totally intentional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, that's why I think it didn't agree with me. That wasn't quite my type of film. I mean, I've watched Italian horror and I get it, but the way they did it, I guess for me, I was just like, I really should be enjoying this. But I it was okay. I get what they were going for, but I guess it just didn't. It hit home with me. Glenn, do you remember this one, Hell Hunt?
Vaguely.
The end ends with the girl in the horns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A few times.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, it's that it seemed they were more focused on style than any kind of coherent story.
Mm-hmm.
Which happens in some of these types of films. They they make something that's very pretty to look at times, but as Dawn has said, it's kind of pretentious.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely get that. I get that same feeling that it definitely came across as a bit pretentious, in that it's like showing you this stuff, and it's like, you should just know what's going on because we're so clever in what we're doing. I wasn't really all that impressed with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doc, did you get a chance to see this one? You did, right?
Yeah, I was there for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was breaking up for you, but in between the parts you saw.
Yeah, and so I don't want to completely whatever it, because I didn't get to see it in its proper display, or whatever you want to call it at that point, a proper performance. But I suppose if you're going to go to the Italian horror at that point and use that as a reference point and have it not make sense, I suppose that's a Fulci film at that point, because there's a few of those that I've seen where it's like, wow, that looks really cool. What does that have to do with it? He was, to some degree, not really hung up on story or plot, even more so just visuals, kind of like explosions and things that keep spinning on robots and stuff. So, what I saw didn't click into any kind of story for me, but I would admit that not having seen it in its fullest promise,
right,
there might be something there, but it sure looked like after a while it just seemed like a lot of moving gifs of things that were it was more visual than once you get to that end sequence, it just seemed like it was just trying to look pretty.
And the thing is,
that could be all it is.
I've watched films like that, and I do enjoy them. It just was with the way this one played off, I guess, it was one of those things where it just didn't hit me. I got what they were going for, and production wise, yeah.
Oh, it looked beautiful. But,
it looked fantastic, but for me, I like at least just a hair of a narrative in there. You got it kind of the beginning and the setup of it, but then it just kind of goes into these things where I'm like, am I watching a student film who's demonstrating style? There's really no story here, is there? And I guess for me, I like a little bit of it. And I guess how it's executed. What, Don? Sorry.
In a weird way, it reminded me. Forgive me. In a weird way, it reminded me of.
It cut you off before you said the title. Which one?
Last Action Hero.
Oh, yes. Okay.
In a weird way, it reminded me of that.
Wow, I would have not expected that comparison. Go, Dawn. I love the way your brain thinks. You mean with the movie coming to life sort of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
A horror version of that.
Right. Sure. With less Tom Arnold. Though watching Tom Arnold, get stabbed might actually be entertaining. But anyway, I joke. I don't want Tom Arnold stabbed for real. But in a horror movie, that might be fun. Paul, how about you with Hell Hunt? Like you said, I know you're the director. You don't want to say that, but how'd this one fare with you?
It was fine for me because I think we needed that sort of, because again, I was taking the films and the festival as a whole, which is what I'm supposed to do, obviously. And so to me, this was the representation of this type of film, where it was very artistic, and we didn't quite have that. We had an animated one, and we had comedies and stuff like that. And I thought that this was a nice thing. I'm just wondering, though, if I might have placed it in the wrong spot, because we put it where we did simply because of its content. And so it ended up being on a Saturday night. I'm wondering if we should have moved it to the Sunday morning, because that's typically where we put, the different types of films, the ones that are very artistic. Like last year we had this wonderful one about this kind of like a mermaid type story, and I think a lot of people were like, wow, this is too early to think about. And would it have been better if I placed that film in that type of environment, where it was like people needed a movie to wake them up? But again, I put it in on the Saturday night because of its content.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So
what do you guys think?
For me, that just was one of those that just didn't quite hit it. I got what they were going for, but I was like, okay, I'm glad this isn't a feature.
The makeup work was good, though. I really did like.
Totally.
Yeah.
Again, the production, the quality.
Great.
Everything,
just
yes.
No story.
It just was it's completely devoid of story, which again, I don't need story necessarily, but it just the way it was approached.
Yeah.
I think maybe if I could have done without the words.
Oh, yeah.
For each one, whitening, reddening.
Oh, yeah. That brings back bad memories of other things. Yeah.
I just, I think maybe I could have done without that.
You could have turned off the closed captioning.
I think that was, no, I think putting the words in between was going over
gotcha.
the edge for me. I'm all for edge and obscure and okay. I didn't need it spelled out for me.
Literally spelled out.
Many people who maybe aren't familiar with Italian horror, they'd be like, okay, sure. But just for me, I was like, really? Is this supposed to be a short film or a film educational film class that I'm in suddenly? So
it could have been. It could have been.
Yeah. So just for me, that one is the one where it's at. So we're gonna wrap it up here, I think, for tonight. I know there's plenty more here we could talk about, but I want to try to rein it in a little. So let's go down the line and let's get two honorable mentions that we haven't talked about already that you did enjoy, so we can end this on a lighter note. So we'll just go right down the line. Dawn, two that we didn't mention that you enjoyed.
Two. So Bride of Frankie.
Yes.
A nice, lovely twist on the Frankenstein story. And I can't resist Morning in the Cemetery. I love I'm sorry, Paul. I know you love the Raven James character as much as I do.
Yeah. Cool. The Raven James one is, you can definitely see where he's going with it, and in a lot of ways I like the different locations with it, and it's just I'm still having a little bit of a tough time with the main character, the main actor for the film for me.
I think he does a fantastic job.
Yes.
Daniel Harris.
Like I said, I just, for me, I don't know what it is. I think the film's fine and the way put together, just like with the last Raven James ones. I liked everything around the character. It's just the main character for some reason just it's not touching me at all. I'm not getting into it. I'm liking the world that's being made and the characters around Raven James, but just Raven James, I'm not sure if it's the actor or the character. It's not quite there for me.
I
can honestly, with your history, I can see why.
I like this one even better than the last one. I thought this one was a little more solid and together, but I can I can see kind of where you're coming. I thought that actor did a better job this time, but
Yes.
and then I'm not saying that he did a poor job the first time, but he seemed a little more solid this time. But I can see still like there's some little, dialing it in a little bit. I could see maybe so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, yeah, out of them, I can see the most. I've liked him the most out of this. It's just still a character in general. I just can't quite get into it like I probably should be able to with these. So, but still, excellent choices there, Don. Glenn, how about you? 2 honorable mentions we haven't talked about.
There's nothing left. I was going to see Bride of Frank Heat, but that got taken. So
that was a fun one. The whole feminist angle with.
I did like that one. So
sorry, I missed that one.
Yeah, that one was.
Hopefully, at some point.
That one
you
was.
Remember the last zombie? That was a good one.
Stop stealing my bit.
Yeah.
Don's just picking them all for people.
Yeah.
You're not Steve Allen. You're stealing my bit.
Yes.
Okay, Doc. So you liked the last zombie. Which other one did you enjoy?
Yeah, I really liked that one. And if I'm gonna go with Baba Yaga because that one was it was effective. And it did what some of the other ones didn't do. I think in length, that one did with brevity and with it managed to do a nod to previous existences without it being prolonged or obnoxious. With the Nosferatu sequence as the guy's watching a film, so he managed to use a public domain film in a way that didn't just feel like it was there just for the sake of being there.
Yeah, I like Baba Yaga. The length was perfect for it, what they were going for. And yeah, it didn't feel like, and don't get me wrong, I love indie horror, but there are some indie horror films out there where it feels like there's a demonstration of just how much we love horror films in the film.
Yeah.
When there doesn't necessarily need to be. And I was worried when this one starts, but yeah, it plays out well. And better than expected, because when you see that, you're like, oh, great. Okay, here we got a horror fan. Okay, I see where this is going. But then you don't. And that design of the creature.
In a little moment of humor, too, without it being, it was funny without being, like, obnoxious or anything like that either, too. It was just like, okay. That kind of makes sense. All right, good. We're moving on now. Cool.
It was creepy and humorous at the same time.
Yeah, it was playful.
Yes. And Paul, which 2 that we may not have talked about that you just want to honorable mention?
Restricted Diet for its message of racism with horror.
That was fun.
Yeah, the socially aware horror film. Yes.
And of course, from our returning filmmaker Keith Hopkins, who had a baby just recently. Yay! But his film was called Undo, and it's a wonderful retelling of the old Monkey Paws story.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing.
That one was fun.
Yeah, that one is fun. I liked it quite a bit, especially because you're sitting there the whole time going, dude, you're wasting them.
I know, and she doesn't even know it.
She doesn't know it, but you're just sitting there, stop. You can see where this is going to go, and you're just like, oh, no.
True.
Oh, no. Great. I see where you're going, and yeah, okay.
That's not your stuff.
Not your stuff.
Stop, Mark. That's not your stuff.
Yeah, it's not your stuff. And for me, I guess my honorable mentions, we kind of touched on it briefly, but it went a place where I did not expect it to go, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Partly it was because of the guy who played the priest, but it was holy fuck.
I knew you were going to pick that one.
I know. I may be a little predictable, but it was holy fuck. It was just once you realize what they were going for, I'm like, you couldn't help but just, it was great in the audience too, because the audience was getting it before they really started getting into what the shtick was, and people just, and it was funny hearing the audience as it went on. More and more people got it. You guys wrong, but you could hear the reaction of the crowd, and you could hear some people chuckle, and then a few more people chuckle, and then pretty soon everybody realized exactly what they were going for, and then everybody was laughing. So I liked that one, and I will admit I also enjoyed Ruhangi. How do you?
Oh yes.
Ruhangus. Thank you. The animated short film about the seance going wrong. I really dug that one too because of the visual style. It had a good mixture of a bit of humor, a bit of action, and then it ends really well, I thought. And I enjoyed that one quite a bit too. So there you have you, folks. It gives you a little flavor of what happens at the New Horror Film Festival in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Please, folks, support your indie horror, and you can even check out a website, which Paul will, I'm sure, give here in a minute, of where you can find the information and tune in for what's going to be next year. And you can even set your date to come to the Great Cheesehead State and come for the beer and stay for the horror. So we'll go down the line now, and this is where you can find out where you can find people when they aren't chatting on the show here. Dawn?
You can find me in the audience.net, and always support your local filmmaker.
Yes, thank you, Dawn. And Glenn?
You can find me Facebook with Beamy Bunker, Guy in a Bunker Productions. You can also find me on YouTube with Guy in a Bunker Productions and Beamy Bunker. Check out guyinabunker.com or listen to my gaming podcast, The Adventure Party, which you can find on gncast.com. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Guy in a Bunker.
He is everywhere. And also the fact that he is a filmmaker in his own right. So there you go. You should check out his short films. Are they still online there, Glenn?
They are.
Awesome. So
they're
check
not going anywhere.
Just search for Hell and Guy in the Bunker. Don't just search for Hell on YouTube, because you'll get some results that you probably don't want to see. Paul?
You can find more about the Northeast Wisconsin Horror Film Festival at N.E.W Horror Fest. That's newhorrorfest.com. And we have basically information about this year's festival, last year's festival, and starting in January, this is the place to go if you want to submit your own film for the 2008 festival.
8? We're going back in time?
Yes, we are. 2018 festival.
Oh, 18.
Well, that makes more sense, Paul.
Yeah. Well, it'll be our third one, so it'll be in 3D. Which is not really in 3D, but
very spooky in the 3D.
Awesome.
We should try. We should really try.
Get Friday for Friday night kickoff film. You should get Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, because
that would be awesome.
The 80s, if your film had 3 in the title, it was going to be 3D, whether you liked it or not.
Jaws 3D.
Oh God,
Jaws 3D.
Oh dear Lord, the chunks that are at the end of that film have burned themselves into my head. The compositing, the black lines, Great. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks. Now I got to go back to therapy now. God, well, like I ever left. And Octavius, where can they find you at, sir?
Well, if you go look for Hell and Guy in a Bunker, you'll see me in that. That started all my mess, pretty much. So thank you, Oshkosh, and thank you, Glenn. Saturday, October 21st, if you're up in the Oshkosh Neenah area, I'm going to be in a show at Remix. Not very long, but I'll be in it.
What?
There'll be a serial killer trying to get me, and they may or may not succeed. I'm not going to provide spoilers in that regard. And then starting November 2nd up till the 19th, Thursday through Sunday, I have some cameo roles in Cabaret Milwaukee's Heart of the Clockwork Man. So you get to see me for a few seconds in that if you can come to the Astor Hotel. Otherwise, Shakespeare's done till March, apart from a special thing we're doing in January, which isn't quite the same thing as normal, so it doesn't really count, but it does. But yeah, I'm around and I'm on the internet because Glenn put us on the internet. So there's that too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, crew, so much for joining me tonight to talk about the festival. Yes, hashtag support your local filmmaker, especially support indie horror. A lot of great stuff out there. Hope we wet your whistle tonight. If you don't go to the Oshkosh, Wisconsin New Horror Film Festival, go to your local indie horror film festival. You'll be surprised what you may see there. Now say goodnight, everyone.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.